and welcome back to another video of jPlay. I am Marcus and today I will walk you through some actual rounds of Great Western Trail by Alexander Pfister, who really seems to be on fire these days. It's really unbelievable how many well-designed and awesome games he delivered throughout the last couple of months and years. This game is really not different because I think this is awesome. I already liked Mombasa a lot, but I think this one is even cooler. Maybe it's really related to the theme, which I really like a lot. Maybe the mechanics feel a little bit easier to get your head around, but overall really I think this is a great game. I'm pretty sure I won't be doing a full playthrough with this one here, but I really want to make sure to show you most of the mechanics of this game, so I might have to do a second video because I don't want this video to be that long, to be honest. But let's see how things go. And I decided to do a demo of a 3-player game. So we have the yellow, the red and the blue player here. All of the players more or less start with the same components. The starting player gets a little bit less money and they all start the game with one of those starting objective cards here. They're pretty cool because they can only provide you bonus points and you can really choose if you want to fulfill this goal or maybe go for another goal, because the normal objective cards which you could acquire throughout the game also have a penalty or a potential penalty if you play this card and will not be able to fulfill the mission here. In this case you could lose 3 victory points by the end of the game, but in a game like Great Western Trail 3 victory points isn't really that big of a deal. The game ends when this job market token here makes it all the way down here to this space and then moves off this space by following that red arrow. Then this more or less triggers the end of the round. All other players still get one more complete turn, but the player who triggered the game end is allowed to keep this job market token because it's worth 2 victory points by the end of the game. Throughout the game you will move your cattleman several times here from the starting space all the way up there to Kansas City. In Kansas City you do some sub phases like whatever, bringing new workforce to the local market. You are allowed to sell your cattle, and last but not least you have to transport those to one of those city up there like Wichita, Colorado Springs and so on. There it's really important to make sure your train will also progress along this railroad here, because the farther you are back, basically the more you have to pay to deliver your cattle to the more valuable cities here to the right. Each player starts the game with a similar herd deck, so there are some cows in this one here. They range from 1 to 3 as far as I can remember. They all show the player colors. There are 14 of those, so this is some kind of a deck building mechanism that's in this game here. And all of the players have a starting hand size of 4. There are ways in the game to basically unlock those special abilities here. So normally whenever you reach a new city when delivering your cattle, you can then move one of these discs over to the city, but I come to that, and then this will unlock a special power. In this one here you would have to pay $5 and this would increase your hand size by 1 to 5, which is really used. And the same is true here for the second ability. Really increasing your hand size is incredibly powerful, which is why you cannot do that too early in this game, at least under normal circumstances. Additionally, all the players start with the same set of buildings. Those buildings are two-sided and providing different actions and special abilities and whatnot. Before the game starts, you more or less decide on which side you play the game with, because really all the players will have the very same set of buildings available to them. Though it's not that way that, for example, player blue here could use side 2A for this building, whereas then the red player could use side B for this. So really all the players start the game with the same set of their own buildings. As part of setup, I already prepared the game board and I drew several pieces of those so-called hazard tiles. So there are these drought hazards, flood hazard, and in theory also some rockfall hazards, but for the very first turn we didn't see any. And on top of this we also placed some of those teepees. They come in blue and they come in green. The color is really only important for some of those objective cards. There are also other tokens in the game, such as those station marker tiles, which you can also acquire throughout the game. And this one here, for example, gives you 3 victory points for each set of green and blue tippies you have in front of you at the end of the game. But I think I will explain everything else as we go. So the very first thing that you would normally do in a normal game run would be to move. You always have to move, so you cannot stand still and linger on your current space. But there is an exception for the very first round, because it says that you have to place your cattleman on one of those neutral buildings, and then you jump directly into phase number 2 of your round, which is then the action phase. So you're taking action at your current location. Yellow is first, so I think yellow thinks it would be a very cool idea to build a building. So let's place his cattleman onto this tile there, and now we jump right into the action phase. This building here offers 2 different actions. You can do them both, you can only do one of those, you can do them in either order you would prefer. The first action here says you can discard a green cow, so this Dutch belt here, so it really shows a green 2, so which in this case is a Dutch belt, and when you discard it you would gain $2 for that. That's already a cool idea. He happens to have a Dutch belt on his hand, so he will definitely discard this one, though this goes to his personal discard pile. Keep in mind there is also a slight deck building mechanic in this game, therefore he's allowed to grab 2 pieces of gold. So let's take this back to his supply and let's just discard this cow. And the second action allows the yellow player to build a house. Now it's important, how many workers does the yellow player have? So we have to quickly check his player board, and all the players start with 1 cowboy, 1 craftsman, that's the proper name, and 1 engineer. Engineers are being used to, let's say, build your railroad. In this case, yeah, he has 1 craftsman, and this means he can build those buildings here that shows the requirement of only 1 craftsman. Later on you can also upgrade one of your buildings or build over an existing building. In this case you only have to have the number of craftsmen that shows the difference. So for a level 2 building, so let's call it a level 2 building, he only needed 1 craftsman if he would have built this over this building here, for example. In this case, I think he wants to build this building here, because this can provide you a lot of money when you build it early in the game. For once, you get $2 for each yellow building that is in a forest, and I come to that in a second. On top of this, it shows this green hand symbol. So whenever a player is landing on this space or passing over this space, this player has to pay the appropriate amount of dollars that are printed next to the hand. In a 3-player game, each green hand symbol that you pass or land on requires you to pay $2. So this can really generate a lot of income. So I think let's go for it. And as mentioned, we will go for this building here. I think that's the outpost. And yeah, we would now place this ideally into a forest. So for example, this would be a space with a forest underneath it. The same would be true here. This is only next to forest, so this doesn't count. So let's take this tile, because this tile also doesn't count for the effect here. So right now when we land on this tile, we would gain $2. So why not place this tile here? And now we have to pay the cost on top of this. And this is shown on the gray building where we trigger the action front. So for each worker or craftsman that this building requires, we have to pay 2 gold. This was a level 1 building, so a yellow player only has to pay 2 pieces of gold or dollars in order to build this tile. The remaining tiles are just going back to his personal supply so he can buy them later in the game. And that was pretty much his turn. And the last thing to do would be to draw up to your hand size. Right now, as I mentioned, the hand size is 4. He played this green Dutch belt cow, so he would be allowed to draw an additional card from his deck. And yeah, guess what? He got a new Dutch belt. And then it's basically over to the red player, and I think he will pretty much do the same. So he will also start the game on this building here, so there is no limit on how many cattlemen there can be. There's no penalty when going there. So he would also be allowed to play or discard a Dutch belt cow, and he was also lucky enough to have one. So let's discard this cow. Let's grab $2 for it, and then he's also allowed to build a building, and I think he will build one of his buildings up there. I opted to go for another building than the yellow player because I really want to show you the different buildings that are available in this game, and this space offers him an additional action to the action that the building already offers. So he can do this, this, and this here as well, which is kind of powerful. And I should have mentioned that this building here also gives him 1 victory point by the end of the game. The same is true for the building of the yellow player here, but those buildings can really get pretty expensive for once, but they can also provide you an awful lot of victory points by the end of the game. Okie dokie, let's end the turn for red. Let's draw up. He got this white cow, Guernsey. I don't know how to pronounce that right, to be honest. Apologies if I did it wrong. And then it's blue, and I think blue wants to do something completely different. So he will place his cattleman onto this building here, and this building for once lets you discard one of those Guernsey cows for $2. So let's do that real quick. So he happens to have one. Let's collect $2, and then he would be allowed to hire 2 workers from the local worker market, and that's the current workforce that is available. You can only hire workers that are on top of this or above this worker market token here. So he has really a good choice: a craftsman, a cowboy, and an engineer. And for the first worker, he would have to pay the costs that are printed next to the row. So that's basically $6. If he wanted to hire a second worker, he would have to pay $2 more. He started the game with $8. He just got 2 more, but I think, yeah, he cannot afford to get 2 workers. So I think he will pay $6 and will hire the one and only cowboy in the market there. I think this could be pretty important for him. So let's place the cowboy onto his player board, and you notice those extra spaces here. Whenever you hit one of those spaces, you are allowed to get a free action that's basically printed on this card. In this case, you would be allowed to take any one of those hazard tiles. For once, those hazard tiles hinder your movement because you have to count them when doing a normal move actions. But what's really more important is they provide you a lot of victory points by the end of the game. And you can also use those for any set buildings because of your objective cards, like this card here, which pretty much says you have to have 2 buildings of your own buildings, and you would also have to assign one of your hazard tiles in order to claim those 3 victory points. That was pretty much the turn of the blue player, so let's draw another card. Okay, that's a Black Angus, tasty. And that's already the end of the very first round. Now we come back to the yellow player, and now he has to move. The movement value of your cattleman is also printed on the player board. All the players start with 3 movement points, so basically up to 3 movement points, but you can also increase that by more or less unlocking those abilities. So when you would unlock this one here, you would gain 2 additional movement points, and if you would unlock this one you get one more, so up to a total of 6 movement points. And with those movement points you're really in control how soon this game actually ends and how far you get. So this is really relatively important, but for now all the players have 3 movement points, and as mentioned you have to move at least one space. So lingering is not allowed. What is a space? This is empty. This is not a space. This is a space. This is a space. This is a space. This is a space. So every token that's here on the board is a space. So for example, he could use just one movement point to move over to this space here, and this would then also allow him to hire a worker. But he could also directly move 1-2 spaces onto his own building in order to gain some dollars here. Or if you would go totally crazy, he could also move 1-2-3 spaces here. This space then really you have to pay a lot of dollars. Again, keep in mind for each hand you see you have to pay some dollar amounts. Normally you are trying not to do that, and when landing on some of those spaces you are then allowed to use one of your auxiliary actions that are printed here on the board. But of course you have to unlock those first. Those 2 are already unlocked. There is also a way to double those, but I come to that maybe during a later stage of the game. But those actions down there you really have to unlock first. So you have to move this disc away, for example, in order to be allowed to take this. So this auxiliary action just says take $1. This pretty much allows you to exchange one of your cards, which can be pretty important, especially when coming closer to Kansas City here, because you're only getting paid for different kind of cows. So in this case you really want to have as many different cows on your hand as possible in order to get some money for those. In this case I think red wants to move down there and hire some workforce. So he will move one space here, so he basically have to forfeit his last 2 movement point, but that's really not a problem. And again he could discard this value 2 cow here. Unfortunately he doesn't have one, so he would jump directly into the hiring step here. But again you can do them in any order you like, and I think he definitely wants to hire someone, and now I'm not so sure. Yeah, why not? So he will pay $6 here, and he will go for this engineer. That's also the only engineer right now on the board, so this can be a tactical advantage. So let's place the engineer onto this space, and the engineers are really special because they unlock a special ability with each of the engineers you are hiring. So in this case this allows him to discard a Jersey cow basically, and I think he will do that, and this allows him to gain 1 temporary certificate, which he can then later on use in order to gain some more money. But of course he doesn't have to do that. Okay, that was I think pretty okay for him. He's pretty much broke, and I noticed I moved the wrong cattleman, but I repaired that for now, so he will not go for a second worker. So let's just draw his card. Oh, an additional Black Angus. That's not really cool for him, but there are still ways for him to get rid of those, because keep in mind you want to have as many different cows as possible when you reach Kansas City. Then it's red. Red will also move here, pretty crowded. He has a white cow that he can discard. I will not even try to pronounce the name right, so let's grab his $2. And unfortunately he can only go for this worker here, so he will pay craftsman, so he'll pay $6. And yeah, this allows him to place the craftsman next to his player board. As of now he will be able to build native level 2 buildings, or by upgrading this existing level 1 building he will also be able to replace it with a level 3 building. Then it's the blue player. Blue can also move 3 spaces. The problem is when he moves over this one here he has to pay the yellow player $2 because he would pass a green hand. He could also move this way, but this would cost him $3. Of course he would pay to the bank, but it's more than those $2. So I think in this case, yeah, he will swallow the pill, and I think he will move 1, 2, 3 spaces onto this building. First of all, he will give $2 to the yellow player, and then he will move into his action phase, and I think he will only go for this action here, which says discard 2 cards that are pretty much the same, or that are the same. In this case, he will go for 2 of those Dutch bells, and this would give him $4, which isn't that bad. Here he could basically pay $7 in order to grab one of those hazard tiles, but right now he doesn't have the cash, and I think for him it's right now not really important, so let's just grab those dollars. And as he used 2 cards this round, he will also be allowed to draw new cards, and this is also very, very unfortunate for him. Okay, let's see how things go. Let's do one more round, and I think yellow will play it pretty simple. He will move onto this space here, his own building, and the ability here says he gets $2 for each of his buildings that are on the forest. Right now he only has 1 building, but luckily it's on a forest, so therefore he's allowed to get $2. And you already see that this building is really powerful. So I think this would be really also the building for the blue player. But again, I wanted to show you some variety here, because overall he already got $4 out of this and only had to pay 2. So let's grab this dollar. He didn't play any cards, so he's not allowed to draw new cards. Then it's red, and I think red wants to move 1, 2, 3 spaces here. Again, he passes over the yellow building here with a green hand, so he has to pay $2 to the yellow player, and then he's allowed to trigger this action space here, or the building here. And this action space is a bit different because you have to choose between one of those options. So here he could trade with the Indians or the Native Americans, or he could pay $2 to move his engine 2 spaces ahead. Can be pretty nice, but I think they are all pretty broke. And here on this one he can basically do one of his auxiliary action, but here he's allowed to use the double effect if he has unlocked the double effects, but I come to that in a second. I think here he wants to trade with the Indians, so he's allowed to grab any one of those tokens. In some of those he has to pay some dollars, and in those he's allowed to get some dollars. And as he really wants to have this green TP there because of his objective cards here, which says you have to have at least 1 TP, he will totally go for this one here. So this gives him $1, and he's also allowed to keep this TP. Then he's allowed to do this action, and of course, why not doing this? Right now he only unlocked those, so this is pretty much your starting setup here. If he would have unlocked this one here, he would now be allowed to do the double action. So in this case he would get $2 instead of only 1, or if he would have unlocked this one, he would be allowed to exchange 2 of his card instead of only 1. But I think right now he's relatively happy with his cards, so he will just trigger this auxiliary action, and this just gives him 1 additional buck. Last but not least, it's blue, and blue will move 1 space onto this building. Now he's allowed to move his engine 1 space for each engineer he currently has on his player board right now. That's only 1, pretty much the pre-printed engineer, but he will take it anywhere. So let's move his engine 1 space ahead. Right now this isn't worth anything. Here it's really important that you pass those red crosses here, because this pretty much shows you how much you have to pay in order to deliver your cattle. So he still has to make at least 3 more movement points in order to reduce the cost by $1. But he's still allowed to use his auxiliary action, and I think he will totally do this. And in his case he will go for this action, because keep in mind you want to have different cows on your hand when you deliver those, and this is really a bad hand. So he will discard 1 of his black Angus cows and will redraw an additional 1, and he's again so damn unlucky. He was really hoping for, I don't know, a white one or another green one, if there still is one, not quite sure. But this was really a very, very, very unfortunate draw for the blue player. And that's pretty much the end for him, because he's not allowed to redraw cards. He's at his hand limit already. That's really the end of the round. And I think I will end my walkthrough for today. But yeah, I think I will definitely do one more video, and this will then show you all the subphases here in Kansas City, how you sell your cattle, how you have to transport your cattle, how you deploy new workers and new hazard tiles onto the board, and everything like this. And I really hope I can show you some more of those buildings that are currently present on the game board. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed my little walkthrough of Great Western Trail so far. Stay tuned for episode number 2. I will really try to publish it as soon as possible. And yeah, hope to see you soon in one of my other videos. And until then, bye bye.